Good afternoon. Welcome, AIDA Africa, Africana Journal Club members and guests. We have yet another webinar that is a research mentorship session as voted by you members and as volunteered by one of us. And today we have a really interesting topic that each one of us usually has to grapple with whenever you do a study, and that is research ethics. Typically in your thesis, it will cover chapter 3, chapter 3, the section on ethical considerations. And a lot of you have been having questions on what to include in that section. So today you get to know how to be ethical, what you need to know, and what to do. So today we are covering the knowing, the being, and the doing, all about research ethics. And we are really honored to have our facilitator. And I'm going to introduce him shortly and then give him the floor. But meanwhile, please also introduce yourself in the chat. We may not have the luxury to have each one of us say our names because there are still many more of us coming in. My name is Dr. I'm the lead mentor at AIDA Africa. So our facilitator for today is one of us, a member. His name is Enock Marita. He is a consultant with over 20 years experience in health project management and research. Mr. Marita holds a master's in public health, MPH, and also has several professional certifications. His career objective is to utilize his skills, knowledge, and expertise in improving the healthcare of mankind through research, leadership, and capacity building. He has been a principal investigator or PI on several projects. He's written scientific papers, published widely, and presented in international conferences, as well as leading health-related consultancies. He has helped develop policy guidelines, training manuals, reporting tools, and a toolkit, which is adopted by the Kenya's Ministry of Health. He has lectured in 2 universities in Kenya. We will be curious to know which ones they are. He's facilitated and coordinated training activities and is a member of quite a number of professional bodies and fora. So we are very honored to have you, Enock, and please, you may take over the session, after which we will have question and answer. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the humble introduction. Good afternoon, all. Or do you have somebody in the morning?
Yes, we do have participants from across the world, and feel free to switch on your video if you like. If not, you can keep it off to save the bandwidth. Okay, there we go.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, please lower your camera a little so we can see your face.
Oh, you want to see my face first and then I can, okay.
All right.
Good afternoon and good morning, all. It's my humble pleasure to have this session with all of you. I think having seen my face, I can keep it up so it is not so heavy for us as we go through this. Thank you so much for the humble introduction. And without much ado, I want to straight away go to our presentation, which we want to discuss about ethics, research ethics. And I know this is an area which sometimes can be in controversies and back and forth, especially when you want to go out for research and you need some approvals from ACLCs or RBIs, those bodies that regulate or approve any research to be done, especially on human beings. Allow me to share my slides. I know I was asked to say which 2 universities I've lectured. I did lecture sometime back in Kenyatta University and TUK, Technical University of Kenya. Actually, like in TUK, I was among the team that started some of the courses there. I remember drawing some syllabuses for curriculum for one of the courses there.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, Enock. Could you please speak up a little bit?
All right.
Or come closer to your speaker. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry for that. Yes, I was saying that I've lectured in 2 universities, that's in Kenyatta University and University of Kenya, where actually in TUK I helped start a program there on public health. and one that was for medical lab technologists. So that's it. I think you wanted me to clarify which university, so I did that. So let me go straight into our session, and that's about uh, research ethics. Allow me to share my screen.
Yes, you can.
Are we able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Let me put it in a presentation order. So our session is about research ethics, and I thought there are a couple of things that we need to know, so that as we do our research, it becomes a little bit smoother as far as ethics is concerned. What are we going to cover? I realize that the research ethics is quite wide. What I've done is to do almost like an bird's eye view, where I'm touching on various aspects of research ethics with emphasis on areas that I thought can be very necessary for us. It's something that we can do over almost 5 sessions before we finish. But I've touched here and there, and some of the areas I may not go into details. I may want to ask even the participants to go work further on it or read further on it with some of the references I'm able to share. So the topic that I'll cover today is about, we'll do some introduction so that we are able to really define what is this research ethics, or what is it all about, and let's get to in the mood of research ethics. And then we look at how has this ethics evolved over time. What are some of the things that have been set aside, like the codes or regulations, to ensure that ethics is all over the world. We also dive into principles of research ethics. Also, how to effect these principles. What do we need to do so that we ensure that we have achieved these ethical requirements? Out of the ethical principles, I dived deeper into one aspect that I know each and every researcher must write, and that's the informed consent. So we get some details on informed consent, and then we also want to understand why will you be concerned with research ethics? So we get to see a few things here and there, and I thought of giving some typical research examples that may have some ethical risks that you really want to think deeper if you're going to do something related to those aspects. For any research, especially that deals with human beings, you must seek clearance with an ethical committee. So it's a topic that we can cover actually on its own, but I thought, let me look into what are these things the ethical committees really look for, so that you're able to approve, for them to approve your research work. And then I thought it's wise for us to have a few case studies so that we can be able to practice a little bit and think about some of these ethical issues, and a little bit of summary, what we have covered all up there, and I'll give references so that some areas that are not properly covered, the participants can go and dig deeper and read on their own. What do we want to achieve at the end of this? I thought it's good for us to, at least at the end of it, we are able to define what research ethics is, explain the applications a researcher has towards participants and society, describe why adopting an ethical approach to research is important, describe how ethical principles are of benefit to sound research design, and if you forget all the above, at least remember that you need to apply this ethical research ethical frameworks or requirements for you to do your research in a very good way without brushing shoulders with those who are responsible for regulating the research community. All right. So then we ask ourselves, what is exactly research ethics? And we realize about ethics, and on the other arm is research. I will not dwell much on research because I want to presume that all of us have defined or understand research because all of us were in this setup of research. There are quite a number of people or groups of people who have come up with introductions or rather definition of ethics. And I sample a few that I want to share with you. Like Aristotle and his team said, it's a discipline dealing with what is proper course of action for man. Others thought that it's also known as a moral philosophy that involves systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior. Blumberg thought it's sets of moral principles or norms that are used to guide moral choices of behavior and relationship with others. How do you relate with others? The way you act and relate with others, is it something which is acceptable to those around you? Another team said or defined it as norms for conduct that distinguish between right and wrong and acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So research ethics may be referred to as doing what is morally and legally right in research. You realize that ethics is about creating that mutual respectful relationship amongst those in the research community, and those who participate, even the community, they are able to realize, yes, this is something which is constructive and is going to help us. That's some bit of it. Then we combine the two, research ethics, then we say, in short, for almost two of these, you've forgotten the others. You can remember that it's a code of guidelines on how to conduct scientific research in a morally acceptable way, or rather principles and standards that help researchers to uphold the value and standards of knowledge construction. So the main objective of research is at least to construct knowledge, or rather come up with some aspects of knowledge, something new that people need to know about some research work you've done. So what are those things that will guide you, the principles and standards that will guide you to ensure that what you come up with is really respected and it's going to be trusted. So that is basically the definitions of research ethics. Just for those who might have forgotten a little bit about the research, what it is, probably looking at this team who say that's a process of investigation leading to new insights, effectively share. Once you come up with the knowledge, you're able to share it out. So those processes that you undergo until you come up with the new knowledge, it's a scientific way of doing it, then it's a research. Ethics is quite central to any research process or work. You cannot do any of the research activities without putting ethics at the core of it. And you realize that researchers really have to take care of those requirements for ethical requirements to ensure that at any level of the process of research, you are able to observe ethical guidance or requirements. There can be ethical concerns almost at every step of the research process. Even though few aspects of research ethics have been set out in legislation, some countries have come up with acts that guide on ethics of research and such. But at the core of it is that you observe moral values that are central to research. For you to carry out research, then we emphasize that ethics is very important. And the ethics have really gained a lot of importance across all the research community. And for those who've been practicing, you'll agree with this. And for those who are starting, as you go down the line, you realize this. We Having had the ethics around, it has come from a distance. It has come a long way. A number of things have happened that led the countries or bodies, organizations realize the essence of coming up with ethical ethics in research. I will not want to go into details into this, how the ethics evolved over time, probably started from around 1900 to around 1990, even up to date. I want to leave this bit because of the interest of time. I've given a guidelines here. At the back of it, I've given references. I'll request as a takeaway, they call it homework in school, that on your own time, try to look at these various aspects of evolution, where we started with ethics, looking at starting probably way behind or back the Berlin Code of Ethics, guidelines for human experimentation. There's a Nuremberg Code, Declaration of Helsinki, Belmont Report, and all the way to COMS guidelines and all this. I request that we can be able to dive into this at our own times and read and see how ethics evolve over time from this time. So I'll not go into more details because this is something we can discuss as a session on its own. Allow me to continue and ask that members can be able to read this on their own. I've given the references. Actually, when you Google, you'll be able to realize this and read the history of how ethics came about based on these different steps. Then I want to look at principles of research ethics. And this is quite a thorny, and people have different thoughts about it. Some list a number of these principles in different ways, different understanding. But from my end, I'll approach it from a Belmont report where it gives 3 principles that I thought covers almost all areas of ethics that we will discuss down the line. And these are about respect, beneficence, and justice. We'll get into each of these and try to understand how it is, what are these principles. We get to get them in details. So despite all those national requirements or whatever, ethical research must be able to conform with other aspects of regulations within a country or international bodies. So whatever we practice, we're able to conform with the requirements of ethics in research. We start off with respect. This is a principle that really incorporates the aspect of almost 2 levels, where it talks about autonomous. You treat the subjects, especially those who are going to respond or those under study. So you treat them as autonomous. They can be able to take part or refuse to take part or whatever it is. And there are people who may have aspects of diminished autonomy, and they must get additional protection, right? So respect of persons can take different aspects. You respect those who you're doing research with. You respect those who are going to respond or understudy. You respect even those in authority, and respect goes across all aspects of dealing with human beings. So I just want to give some examples of vulnerable groups that may need additional protection. And these are areas that is very sensitive, especially you're going to ask for approvals from bodies responsible for approvals. We start with those who are aged. Some people are a bit aged, they may not have that autonomy, or they're able to decide on their own. They may need some special protection. There are those who are mentally handicapped. They have some challenges with their way of doing things. Minors, children. This is an area which some say that children who are between 8, and others say from 12 or 14 to around 17, considered as children who can give assent. We'll talk about assent later. We have prisoners. Actually, it's a group of people that was abused. If you read the history, you see something called Tuskegee study, a civil study that was done for almost 40 years, and prisoners were being subjected to a very bad way of treatment. And that's why they thought it's good to have prisoners as part of those who can be protected. There are those who are illiterate. We have minority groups, and you could consider those with low social status. So all this needs to have extra, rather additional protection as you do the research. We have the other principle about justice, which really mostly dwells on how do you dispute the risks or the burdens and benefits of research. Whatever you're going to do, you realize that there could be some risks, there could be some benefits out of it. So how do you distribute this, especially among those who are being recruited? How do you recruit them? Are you going to do it in a very just way, or you introduce some aspects of bias? So this is where we deal with aspects of justice. So there should be fair procedures and outcomes in the selection of research subjects, where you look at equity and you're giving them at least a fair share of what they're equivalent to. So no group or class of persons should bear more than its fair share of the burdens or benefits of participation in the research. It tries to ensure that whatever you're going to do, if there's some risks, you're able to balance it off. If there are benefits, no one group that will benefit more than others. So you need to be quite equitable just in the research process. So the burdens and the benefits of research should be fairly distributed among the individuals, the groups, or societies under research. So ensure that justice is really done. The other one is about beneficence. The ethical application to maximize benefit and minimize all that will cause harm. So whatever you're going to do, ensure that the risks or the harms that may arise as a research as a result of doing research are really minimized. And if there are opportunities to increase the benefits, please do that. So risks of research should be reasonable. Should not that which is going to bring a lot of issues, especially to those who participate. So it depends on the kind of research you're doing. Like I can give an example. You may want to draw some blood. Of course, when you want to draw blood for somebody, there is that minimal pain. That's a risk that can be borne by those who want to participate. So if there's a way you can draw maybe whatever substance you want in a different way, which is likely to cause less pain, then opt for that is going to cause minimal amount of pain or harm. As you come up with your research, the design must be sound, so that you are forethought about the risks that is going to be there, and how do you design this so that you are able to maximize benefits and minimize harm. Investigators also have to be competent. You cannot be able to do this if your competence is down. So you must be competent to ensure that you safeguard the welfare of the research team and research subjects that are going to participate. The other terminology that other people really list in terms of principles, which I thought others think it goes hand in hand with beneficence, is about really trying to minimize or causing no harm, which they call in one word non-malfeasance. So the research you're going to do, it should prescribe the deliberate infliction of harm. In other words, it should lessen the harm, or if possible, totally take away any harm to the subjects that you're going to study. Research will also consider harmful. The research will be considered harmful if it causes any physical, psychological, social, economic, or legal harms. So if any of these ones are going to come up and it's not minimized, it's going to be a concern to those who are going to participate, then it's going to be harmful and it's not accepted. There are some other things that quite a number of people may not be able to consider as harmful, but it happens, and as a team, we want to be aware that if you're going to cause embarrassment, to ridicule somebody, to belittle somebody, subject someone to mental distress, cause somebody to be anxious, stressful, or subject to emotional reactions, all these are going to be considered as harmful to those who are taking part in the research. So at the top of it, remember non-malfeasance. So don't cause any harm as you do research. Just trying to summarize what we talked about: justice, beneficence, and respect. So for justice, we have said that don't place one group of people at risk solely for the benefit of another. So be fair in the distribution of the burdens and the benefits. So burdens or risks and benefits of research should be fairly distributed among those who are going to participate, whether there is an individual, it's a group, or society or community. Make sure that this is fairly distributed among the participants, especially when they are recruiting. You might want to go maybe in a community and you want to recruit some people. You may want to recruit those who are closer to the road and leave those who are interior. So you not be just, and at the end of the day, you'll be introducing bias that can be discussed in a research setup. Respect for people, and it's very important. We've said that ensure you observe autonomy, that's self-determination. People can voluntarily want to participate in the research, and if they do not want, you do not force them. They can let off at any point. So respect even those who sponsor you. Respect the communities where you're going to work. Respect for knowledge and academic community. These are your colleagues who are in research, or your supervisors, whoever. So anybody who's in the research community, it calls that you have respect for all. So we have said beneficence, the ethical obligation to maximize benefit and to minimize harm, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, social, we also say economic, or even legal, all those you must be able to minimize. So said benefits must be weighed against potential risk that a person might have by participating, and if possible, minimize them, or even remove if at all can be able to. So research should only be justified if its conduct and results will be of benefit to the participants. So at the end of the day, once you've done your research, ensure that there's benefits, not negative things, but there's benefits to those who are participating, or directly or indirectly. So how the community will benefit should be clear from the research protocol. Let them know when you're doing research, what is it they're going to benefit as they participate in this. Can I pause there and ask for any questions? Is there anybody who needs some clarification as we go down the line?
Sure, that's a good idea. Let's see if anybody has a comment or a question so far. Can we all now confidently define beneficence, non-maleficence, respect, autonomy, justice? Is there anybody who has something to add or refute or ask? I'm checking the chat, and we are not so many, so you can just unmute if you have something to say. Nafisa, did you unmute because you have something to say or? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. I guess we are all following and I don't see anyone. Jaika, you want to say something? Sylvester. All right. I guess on that note, I don't see any comments, or maybe we are still digesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We can progress on.
But maybe let me just comment and say, I like how you gave us context of the history of research ethics, because many times when we have discourses on research ethics, a lot of us presume it is only about standards and regulations without the reflexive aspect of why is it that nowadays we even have to consider, for instance, prisoners to be vulnerable populations. And you gave us a very good example from history, the well-known, very famous Tuskegee experiment where, prisoners were injected with the syphilis in order to see, and mostly they were actually of African origin. And that was a very, very sad experiment, And, research ethics discourses should move away from just only standard guidelines and prescribing what to do to thinking reflectively also about which ethical guidelines would really work in our context. Because what happens is there's always a disconnect between what is the ideal thing to do in a situation and what mostly we end up doing in reality. In Kenya, we say things qua ground or things on the ground. So the discourse on research ethics must always be expanded to how did we get here? What's the context? And what is truly culturally applicable here? And then what do we need to do in order to understand the source or the basis of something? It's not just, doing it as a prescription, but also having understood where it's coming from so that we can always make adjustments if we need to, for instance, resolve ethical dilemmas, because that's where we really get caught up with what to do with the ethics that are laid out. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. It really sheds more light on what we're discussing. I presume that we can continue now.
Yes.
Aha. We are saying that beyond avoiding harm, research should be able to produce some positive benefits, as we have said earlier on. What are some of these things that we want to think in terms of positive benefits? Research should be able to add to human knowledge. We want to really come up or create some knowledge, yielding accurate and valid results. So if somebody went back and did what you've done, can be able to really come up with the same results. We do not see any cooking or any varied outcomes. You'll be able to, the research should be able to provide some feedback to respondents, and if possible, to promote better self-understanding. Once you've gotten this knowledge, it's very important for you to share it out, especially to those stakeholders who may be interested in the area of research, together with those who participated in the research. So we're just trying to emphasize that beyond the harmful thing, what benefits we get out of this research, to understand that. Then we have talked about these principles. I know others is honesty, informed consent, whatever these are principles. But for me, I thought these are those values or morals or things that you must do for you to uphold the principles of research ethics. The list is long, but I just thought I can, post a few here that could be very common with us. And the first one is informed consent, confidentiality, anonymity, and privacy, objectivity, integrity, honesty, non-discrimination, openness, carefulness and respect of intellectual property, equity and equality, competency, responsibility, dignity, sharing or retrieving the results that you came up with, among others. These are things we can discuss in a whole session, but I will not go into each and every one. Like we want to understand what's confidentiality, anonymity, and privacy. A number of people confuse privacy and confidentiality. Privacy mostly comes in practice, especially before and during collection of data. You're ensuring that those who are giving you data, their privacy is ensured, that they're not being exposed or such if they do not want to be exposed as such. So like for example, you may want to collect data in a community and you want to interview a few people. You may want to cite or look for a place where it's maybe not everyone else is exposed to the discussions you have. So that way you'll be ensuring aspects of privacy. Confidentiality mostly comes into practice, especially maybe during and after, in that the data or the information you've collected from the participants or the respondents or subjects, you're not going to share it with anybody else. So as you finally give the results, you ensure that confidentiality is upheld, in that we're not going to say, it's Wangari who told me 1, 2, 3, but you give it, that we give the results in a way that does not point to somebody who has given a certain information, but upholding aspect of sharing it out in a way you are covering whoever who was given you the kind of information that you wanted. Anonymity, sometimes it can be an aspect of even the researcher may not know who has given the data, and you still want to maintain that even if you came to know who it is. So some of these can easily confuse here and there, but you can study further about them. Objectivity, integrity of those, I will not go into them. You realize that I put informed consent in red. That's really any research must conform with, or you must have that if at all you have to get approval to do your research. So I'll dive into informed consent and leave the others for maybe if we have other times to discuss further in details, we'll discuss others in detail later. But I want to go straight into informed consent. Then what is it? Informed consent. It's permission or approval given by a well-informed person who is likely to respond or to give you data during your research. So for you to go ahead and collect data from a subject or a potential participant, you must get the approval. They must allow you for them to participate. Why is it not just a consent, rather informed? Informed, it means that you have to, in a very good way, explain to them, for them to understand, that's disclosure, for them to comprehend, and voluntarily take part in the research process. So that's why we are saying informed, because you're going to explain to them or the participants about what you're about to do in your research work. So that's why they have to be informed. So as they make their consent, they are already in the know of what they're going to participate in. That's why it's being called. Earlier on, I mentioned assent, and sometimes it confuses. And when you go out to do research and you want to deal with children who might be around 14, 15, 16, these ones legally, they cannot give you consent. They're not legally able to sign a consent that yes, I want to participate in this. But rather for them, they sign or they give you what we call an assent. They agree to participate. And if they do that, we call that an assent. And for these children, many times you will have to do two things. You will obtain first informed consent from a guardian or a parent or whoever who's responsible for that child. You get a consent first, which is informed. And then once the guardian or the parent has agreed or given you permission, then as you talk to the child must also give an assent. So they agree to participate. So for children, you realize that you have to have two steps and you have to ensure that this is done. So we say an assent is an agreement of someone, especially children, not able to give legal consent to participate in an activity in our situation, which is research. So remember those two, they sometimes really confused. And if you're dealing with children or those special groups of this, you'll be able to ensure you receive this. You ensure that these two are done. So sometimes there's confusion or different schools of thought who should assent. Some say should start from 14, some say 12, some others say 8. So it depends on where you be and what you agree, probably in the country or wherever that is it. What are you agreeing for someone to give an assent, a child to give an assent on this? So if you're not sure, get back and ask from those who are regulating research ethics in your area of work. So informed consent is given without subjecting a person or a participant to any coercion, enticing, or even undue influence. So then we say it must be the person who's going to participate must do it in a voluntary way. After they have understood, because we shall have disclosed to them, they must now voluntarily participate in the research. You do not, maybe give them something small for them to participate. You do not entice them, that is. You do not influence them in any way. You might be in a position and your juniors are there because you are seniors, so you can influence them to participate. You can force, like the ones of prisons that we talked about. So ensure that whatever research you're going to do, those who participate must do it voluntarily and allow them even midway. If they want to leave, let them leave at any time of the research process. So as I said, the concept is informed. So you have to explain the nature of the research, the procedure you're going to use, what is it, what is the scientific purpose, what are the risks, what are the benefits. All these, the participants must be able to understand. And you must be able to disclose all this information, the objectives and what is it. Some people may say, haha, I'll be dealing with an illiterate group. How do I ensure that they understand? Or I disclose to them, how do I disclose to them? My professor used to tell me that for your research to be really acceptable, you must be able to even explain to your grandmother who never went to school. So no excuse. You can look for a language, way of ensuring that those who are going to participate, you disclose to them and let them understand what we are calling down their comprehension. So once you disclose to them, they comprehend and they use a language, and a language that they can be able to understand if at all they're not able to maybe understand English, maybe you're using French or whatever. So ensure that the language you use, the possible potential participants understand it. And always as you do this, ensure that you're culturally sensitive. You can go to a community and you can be chased away if you're not going to be to really know a few things here and there as are required in a certain community or setup. So ensure that you're culturally sensitive and you explain things in a way that all of them are going to understand and be able to comprehend. So these are very essential as you work on your informed consent document. Then I thought, what are these key elements that must be in this informed consent? Because this is something that regulators or those responsible to approve your research work really look into. I came up with a list of them. The first one is the purpose of the study and what kind of information is being sought and how. So let them, in the informed consent form, ensure that you're explaining clearly and giving all the information that you want to really get out of these people and how you're going to do it. So make sure they understand, they comprehend. Any reasonable or foreseeable potential risks to an individual. Remember, before even you start doing the work, you must do your groundwork to see what are these foreseeable risks that are likely to happen in the process of doing the research. So it's very important for you to explain to them that in case you participate in this, these are some of the risks that might come along as you participate. Also outline the potential benefits to the individuals or anybody who might be interested. So let them know that once they participate, some of the benefits out of the research is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If at all you have an alternative of getting the data or getting the information you need, it's also good to explain or let them know. We've talked about confidentiality or anonymity. That must be clearly explained and provided at all times. It will be a very sensitive thing to meet in your research work. So confidentiality and anonymity and even privacy, very important in your informed consent form. As you do the study, those who are participating need to have the contacts of the person who is responsible for the research. So in that form, you also have to include your contacts. So in case the participants want to have any inquiry or anything that might happen to them, injury during the research, they need to get back to you and get some guidance. So it's important for you to include the contacts of the responsible person who is leading the research. The conditions of participation, including right to refuse or withdraw without penalty. I said this, that the person who has agreed to participate can drop out at any time. So let them know, let them be aware that this is possible and it's their rights to do this. So you must be able to safeguard their rights. So you must always ensure they understand it's voluntary, there's nothing coercion. What's the role of the respondent? Let them understand how much time do I need to get into this kind of thing so that they prepare. Are there commitments that I've got to give? If you want me to maybe respond to your questionnaire in 30 minutes, I need to know in advance so that when I prepare come for that, I know I'm coming for 30 minutes, not 2 hours. So it's very important for you to make this known to a possible respondent and let them know that as you participate in this, you're going to do 1, 2, 3, this and that. So make it very clear for comprehension and at least you disclose. So these are some of the key elements that will not miss in an informed consent form. Maybe I go further. Is there a question? Any question this far?
Does anybody have any question?
Any clarifications?
Alex, you've unmuted. Oh, it looks like it was a mistake.
All right, we can continue.
Any contribution, even a comment? Let's make it interactive. Have you applied these ethical principles in your current research? Okay. It looks like we are all aligned with this. All right. Somebody says it is clear. Who is there yet?
Can I just make an input?
Yes,
maybe
welcome.
as part of something that we also experience while doing research. Your study would be looking into working with the adolescents with specific age. Like what I'm saying is, if your study is looking at population 18 years and above, because that is the age of the consent. And here is a case where you are actually capturing data of people who are adolescent, probably facing challenges of teenage pregnancy. and you realize that when you're consenting, you'll not consent these people. How does that one play along with the policy and in terms of the approval processes during your IRB approvals? Because I know if it is issues teenage pregnancy and your study is capturing part of that, you might be leaving a bigger chunk of this population outside. How do you go about that in this?
Thank you so much. If I get your query is that you could be dealing with adolescents who are below the age of 18, and probably you're dealing with a pregnancy, which is a sensitive thing, especially below the age. And we have clearly said that those under the age of 18, you may want to get a consent from the parents or the guardian or who's responsible, and then an assent from the child or the person who's participating. There are situations that are those who are below the age of 18. There are situations that they could be called mature minors. The mature minors, at some point, they could be allowed to consent. All right. So you can seek consent from this as long as you can be able to prove that these are mature minors. You see, someone who has gotten pregnant, maybe having even a child, the child having a child, so it's already married. So these ones can be given a special group of mature minors who can give consent, and this can be approved by the approval committees. Did I answer you?
Thank you so much. I think that's so helpful. Thanks.
I think in addition, it is important to document. Yeah, I just wanted to add something.
Yes.
In addition, it is important to document which extra safety measures research participants who are either in what would be considered illegal, unethical, morally sinful, or culturally unacceptable situations, which extra safeguarding measures have you put in place? And documenting that will assist not only the participants, because they remain in their communities after you have collected data, and they might suffer a lot of punishment if the research you're doing exposes them in any way. So the idea of documenting safeguarding measures is good from a legal perspective, but also from ethical perspective, in order that you are showing that you carefully considered getting new knowledge or generating knowledge with the group, as well as protecting their welfare. So the idea of documenting and keeping those records of what did you do to really have them comfortable enough to be in the study. And it can be quite a dilemma if parents disagree and the child still needs the research study done, because under the law, the parent has got to sign consent, and the law will uphold the adult's decision over the child's decision. So I think those are some of the dilemmas that people face during research, under which you have to now talk about the mandatory ethics. At the most minimum, the parent or legal guardian must consent. Now, when we say they have consented on paper, but they still will punish the child, then now we are talking about aspirational ethics. Aside from the lower level mandatory ethics, at the aspirational level, what extra things can we do to smoothen things out so that you're not just collecting data and leaving people in conflict? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that addition. Yes, remember we talked about privacy. So during that time, it's very essential to be very sensitive to privacy of these minors who we could be taking the data from, as you've rightfully put it. And then, of course, after that, and remember, and remember, we said that if the research work you're going to do is going to cause any harm, that is, can be psychological or even emotional. So you'll be very unethical. So whatever you're going to do, ensure that you're observing all this. non-malfeasance. Whichever
There
team.
is also, Mhm.
Yes.
There's a comment in the chat by Zadok Mainge. The consenting process is an aspect that most people overlook in research. Some of the consents sought are not informed as they are supposed to be. Again, people forget for qualitative data collection, consent is also required. I've seen that a lot with online surveys. First of all, the people sending the surveys, you're not so sure if they are really researchers. Are they really doing research, or is this a sort of a scam? You know, sometimes you don't know. So because the researcher is not introducing themselves, not talking about the voluntary nature of participation, and you know, so consent is overlooked a lot, and you tend to think because nobody is shouting about it, then you are safe. But remember that that protects you as the interviewer or the researcher. So that's a really good point by Zadok. Thank you. During COVID, we had a lot of online surveys popping up, and we found that some of them were not real research. Sometimes even media houses were asking very personal information. It was quite intrusive because while they want to gather news, they still have to remember that this is personal information, health information, And so there was a lot of data being collected during lockdown, and I saw a lot of unethical things going on. So a really, really good point. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, and I think we need to educate our populations also to be empowered to know who is asking, and you can hesitate. You can say, I'll get back to you. You can go fact check. You can wait. You don't have to run to everyone just because maybe they are going to give you 200 shillings or 1,000 shillings, Yeah, thank you.
Great. That reminds me something, that there are some special occasions that informed consent may be done away with. But this has to be a very special situation that the committee looks into this. For example, you may want to do a certain observation undercover. Depending on how you present the work and the methodology they design, you can be let off the hook of looking for informed consent. So this must be done in some situations, and the committee must be able to approve that. So some situations may require that informed consent may not be applicable, depending on the design, on the way you're going to do your research work. So there are some rare situations that can happen, but not the obvious ones that you get in the community and you just coerce or influence or whatever, all that the committee will not be able to approve. Thank you so much for that comment and addition. I guess we can continue. Just to emphasize further what we have discussed, we realize at almost every stage, and that's what we've said, may require informed, or rather informed consent. What are some of the things that you need to have? This is a way of trying to emphasize what you have discussed. So before you start your study, a few activities that you need to observe so that you achieve your informed consent process, that you could want to assess the local culture. We have talked about it. Go through, understand what the culture is all about, so that you can be able to come up with maybe risks and benefits or whatever it is. So for you to realize that, you must do some little assessment. Identification of risks and benefits before and after the study. So you're able to, once you go to the ground, you're able to realize this. And you might do some pilot testing, so to further understand these aspects of things you need to observe to ensure that you're minimizing risks and increasing or maximizing benefits. At the beginning of the study, you may want to ensure that information is presented with the aid of support material to enhance understanding of the research aims and objectives. Risks and benefits of the study are presented. Understanding is assessed. We have discussed all this previously. We understand its comprehension so that you're able to, and then risks and then presented, you're able to disclose or explain in a language and in a way that people are going to understand. So you have to do all that. And during the study, you must enforce the key ethical principles, or those that we discussed, the respect, justice, and what else? Do those remember? Principles of the three of them that you said? All right.
Anyone can remember? They were even in a chat. Let's see if you were following. What was the other principle? Zadok has typed justice.
Yes, justice. Which other one? I'm looking for one that I did not mention. Say justice.
I've seen the chats. I see people are following. Uizeye Marie Rose says respect. Regina Waiganjo agrees, respect. Zadok Mange, autonomy. Good.
Yes, and the other one is about beneficence.
And then there was beneficence. Good. Zadok has said that. Regina, okay. I see we were actually alert all this time. Zadok has non-maleficent. Great. Wonderful. There were a few more comments. I don't know if I should read them now.
You can.
Yeah, Zadok says, again, money incentives, not necessarily reimbursements, have been used to coerce participants to give consent on many occasions. The researchers do not state it in the ethical review document, but it happens a lot on the ground where data is being collected. I feel like sometimes as researchers, we get desperate on data mining and we forget that people still need a gradual process, and maybe you need the data set suddenly and quickly. And so you kind of, do some unethical things like that. And then another comment, based on the fact that most of the institutional review boards and ISACs do not have the capacity to follow up administration of every study they approve, this really compromises the consenting process. That's a really good point. There's been a big debate now in the body of bioethics committees that the bioethics committees may now need to think about a whistleblower or a sort of a disciplinary arm, okay? So to close the loop after they have done all the work of, reviewing research work and approving, and then if they find out that actually those guidelines were not followed, what then should be done in the ecosystem? And some of the loopholes are such that many researchers, when they do not get approval from one ethics board, they will run to the next institution which has an ethics board and actually look for approval. And because at each stage you pay for ethics approval now, like in Kenya, the process has now been monetized such that the ethics boards are not really looking at the work, they're looking at who has paid. And the minute you pay, your work is approved, whether it is ethical or unethical. So those are some of the challenges and how to close the gap on those who are found to have been unethical. What then needs to happen? It's only recently that the conversation has started about the whistleblower policy, but still the disciplinary and the enforcement is still a big issue.
Thank you for that addition. I want to add that actually for those boards or institutions responsible for approvals, once they approve any research work and there are ethical or practices that are going to go against the grains of what is required, then they are also responsible for those unethical issues. So each board should be in a position to do a follow-up and ensure that what they approve is what is being done. Otherwise, they also get into board with those legal litigation that may follow right thereafter. So for those who may work unethically, they might be caught down the line if somebody seeks litigation on some issues. Thank you. So we can continue. Just to continue emphasizing the ethical consideration in the process of of doing the research. We have various things or points that we may want to consider. This just trying to emphasize what you have discussed, that are as you conceptualize and design a study. So there are a number of things you want to look into so that you align yourself with the ethical issues and the scientific aspects of it. Whatever design you're coming up with, there should be some merit, identify some risks and ways to mitigate the risks. We have talked about this, non-malfeasance and beneficence and justice and all that. When participants are recruited, so the process of ensuring that you have informed consent, the right to privacy, justice, respect, and all this. So as you recruit, ensure that these things of ethics are ensured. During the intervention or measurements procedure, when you're collecting the data, ensure that risks are managed, privacy, autonomy, all those things we have talked about. The release of results obtained, protection of confidentiality, anonymity, and anything that must be ethical. Remember, we talked about some of those values and morals you must observe. After the release of the results, ensure that the participants and community involved in the research benefit. You might have during the assessment, you might have come up with benefits you expected. So ensure that those who participated benefit as such. We're just trying to emphasize what you discussed previously. And then why will you be concerned with research ethics? Why will it concern you? It's all about ensuring that there's professional responsibility to avoid any reputational damage. And you realize that research at some point can be harmful to the participants, the researchers, the institutions, to research communities. So if you do not uphold research ethics, you will find yourself in legal or some situations that are not good. So always guard or protect human participants, their dignity, rights, and welfare. In the kind of research you're doing, please remember all this. And why we be concerned is because we don't want to get in court. So we want to avoid all these litigations. And as I said earlier, some of the liabilities and responsibilities arising from the decision based on ethics, the ethical committee also are responsible and can be sued for that. So if they take those shortcuts of monetizing, as we have discussed, they will find themselves in litigation situations. Right? What are some of the importance of research ethics? I've listed a number here, maybe they can be added. But first one is research ethics promote the aims of research. It increases trust among the researcher and the respondent. Remember, if you've done it all and the results are really valid and all that kind of thing, then there's some trust even from your colleagues and even those who have gotten the results. To protect the dignity, rights, and welfare of research participants, we have said this earlier, researchers can be held accountable and answerable for their actions. Ethics promote social and moral values. It also promotes the ambitions of research, such as understanding, veracity, and dodging of error. Ethical standards uphold the values that are vital to cooperative work, such as belief, answerability, mutual respect, and impartiality. Oh yes, wherever you're in this research community, these are some of the things that can arise. Ethical norms aid to construct public upkeep for research. We want at least to continue doing research. We don't want to go back to the community we are in and we are chased away because somebody somewhere misbehaved or did the wrong things. So we want to upkeep the research. People are more likely to trust a research project if they can trust the worth and the reliability of that research. So ethics is at the core of our research process. Somebody want to add anything there?
Yeah, maybe my question is, in the case of big data, are there instances where we participate non-voluntarily in research?
In the case of, in the case of
big data, in the case of big data.
big data.
For instance, while people think your Gmail account or your emails are all private, the truth is there's always back end statistics being collected at every time, you know, especially the tech companies. When you're watching YouTube videos, suddenly you get AI telling you all the suggestions of all the videos that you'd like to watch, and you realize they know you, they know which kinds of things you like to click on. So what do you have to say about that?
Good. You realize some of those things may not be meeting even the scientific research requirements. So they may not be really following or approved or all that. So they may not necessarily be doing approved research work. So at some point it can be controversial and depends on the school of thought about it. And you realize that for us, as we do research, we have to do scientific processes that are acceptable. So some of those things are not. So this could be part of those that are not doing things accepted in the community or wherever who's responsible. We sometimes we don't miss out some mad persons in a market. Right? Did I help you out?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And we can continue. So just thinking of what are some of the real ethical risks that are controversial and you are likely to get back and forth, especially when you're going for approvals. And you need to think about them seriously, decide in a way that you're going to do it in a proper way, that you're not going to cause any harm, and you're going to be just, and you're going to respect whoever is participating. Some situations are really precarious. For example, we have talked about vulnerable groups, such as children, and we have given an example where we are dealing with pregnancy children as such, and those with learning disability or special needs. These are situations that can really ask or want you to design in a very sensitive way that you're going to be successful in the research process. Sensitive topics. Oh yes, the pregnancy in children that we talked about, sexual issues, illegal activities, or even people's experience of abuse or violence. These are some of the areas you have to think carefully on how you're going to present your methods of protocol and how you're going to handle this. Subjects can only be accessed via gatekeeper. You may want to go through somebody as maybe required in an ethnic way or cultural groups that can be really some of the cultural and practices can put you in a very precarious situation. So you must be very careful as you design this. Element such as covert observation. Yes, this is where we are saying you're doing observation undercover, and you're not under situation that you're likely not to seek consent. So you have to design this in a very special way that you must prove beyond any doubt to the committee that whatever you're going to do, there's no harm, there's no, you're not violating justice, and it's going to be beneficial to society. So there are some situations I earlier said that you may do this without the participants fully informed consent, but this has to be fully approved by the committee that is regulating the area of research. Access to confidential records or information. You have to be very tactful and design your protocol in a very good way. Activities leading to stress, anxiety, and depression among target groups. If at all there's something you may do when this comes out, you must be taken to task. You need to decide to avoid or lessen all this. So these are some of the areas that are really controversial, and you have to be very clear in your design on how you're going to mitigate any risk.
Zadok has raised his hand.
Yes. Carry on, Zadok.
Yes, Dr. Wangari, I wanted to add on this topic of on this aspect of research involving ethical risk. For those in medical research and those who are doing clinical research, there is this aspect of biobanking where you collect human samples and then researchers want to bank them or to store them for future use in studies. It is really an area that is cropping up. And then during the application for ethics review, it is not disclosed that these samples are going to be biobanked for future use. And I really feel that's an area that is causing an ethical risk, because when these participants are consenting in the initial process, they are consenting for their samples to be used at that time. But now you want to bank them or you want to store them for use in the future for other studies, which are not even related to the current study which you are doing. So that is really an area that is moving a lot of risk, and it's really attracting a lot of attention to ethical review committees, and they are very keen on it. Then there is the other aspect of in the drug invention and the use of drugs for treating different conditions. Ideally, diseases continue to diversify and new diseases emerge. For example, you can see like recently we had COVID. There was no vaccine or medication for COVID. Therefore, researchers had to go to the labs to look at really how can we develop a vaccine or a drug for this. So there's the aspect of using unregistered investigational drugs or interventions. Okay, the World Health Organization has approved it, but it happens in some instances where investigational and unregistered drugs are being used for treatment, which is also really posing an ethical risk. Thank you. That is my contribution.
Thanks so much. That's a great contribution. At least other types of situations where we can have ethical risks, especially mentioned biobanking. I worked in a board that was institutional for approval of research. One thing that was being emphasized is that disclosure. And that's why we're emphasizing on the aspect of design. You're going to collect these materials from individuals and you're storing them for future research. That must be clearly indicated in your design so that the board can be able to approve that once you're able to ensure that your protocol clearly decides how you're going to use this in the future or you're storing for. And one thing always that is asked during such kind of approvals is, for how long are you going to have the substances or whatever has been collected? For how long are you going to handle it? And even the data that you collect, you also have to clarify for how long are you going to handle or store this data? Is it 2 years, 1 year? What are you going to do with it? So that has to be very clear as you do your protocol. And I know such questions will arise in the process. So thank you so much for that contribution. Can we continue?
Yes, I see Austin Muswere's hand is up.
Okay. I hope you will add us some time. We have only 5 minutes to go.
Unfortunately, there's another meeting, an internal meeting in 5 minutes, so we may need to speed up. But Austin, you can just ask briefly.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to find out from the presenter that in as much as we grapple to delineate between theory and the practice, how practical is it to take full consideration of all these laid down ethical consideration in terms of doing a research, despite the mention that you have done on typical research topics that involve ethical risk, but in terms of the practicality, how practical is it? Yeah, lest you end up abandoning doing such a certain research. Thank you.
Thank you for that concern. Actually, you realize that most of the things we are discussing, although they be theoretical, you will realize they come in practicability. Like almost all the areas you have discussed, you can have some practical examples in all those areas. So each and every of these requirements, you'll be able to practice on the same. And there's no shortcut about it. You have to learn about it theoretically, and you have to put all into practice. Or not all, but based on the situation, on the kind of research that you're going to carry out. There are some requirements that you must measure up to before you are allowed to do that kind of research. And once that's done, you have to apply whatever it is. Remember, our last objective was how to apply these ethical practices in your research. So it's very situational, depends on the kind of situation you're in or the kind of research you're going to carry out, and you apply it as per the situation, and the purpose will be given as per the situation and how you're going to manage it. So each and every situation or kind of research, you will be able to design. Remember, you are designing and you have to practice it. So,
and just to add to what you're saying,
yes.
I think that's an interesting study, Austin Muswere, to come up with a study on all the ethical considerations that people outline they will do. Do they actually proceed to do them? So the gap between ideal and reality, what actually happens, and that those are some of the challenges we were saying that are on the ground. So I think it would be very interesting to know, are there any ethical considerations that people say they will follow the ethics code, but they actually do not in reality? So the idea of the practicality, the feasibility of always applying each and every one of these things. But the good practice, obviously, if you modify anything, is to say the reason why. Documentation saves you as the researcher. Remember, we said a lot of this consent and documentation is actually to protect, first of all, the participants, secondly, you as the one collecting data, because you can get into trouble with the law or with ethics. Thank you. I think we can proceed now.
Yeah, but just to add on that, something I've just remembered as you say that is that, yes, sometimes you could plan or design how to handle a certain situation, but you get to the ground, you find things are not going to be applicable. So you'll be required to go back. If you redesign again, you have to go back to the ethical committee to approve any changes. And yes, down the progress of doing the research or collecting data, you'll be writing reports as you put it, and give these reports to the committee and keep checking. So if there's anything that is not workable or not practical as you designed, and you need to change anything, that must be taken back to the committee for approval. So that's very important and key. Thank you. So
that's a really good point. And we have to trust that the researcher will be ethical enough to report that they will, that they changed a major part of the protocol. Therefore, they are looking for a new approval for their ethics. Yes. Yeah, thank you for that.
So time is not on our side.
We can just continue because of time. Let me, have us, everyone continue a few minutes. Yeah.
Yes, I also wanted to emphasize on some of the things that our ethical committee can look into. As I said, ethical